and I'll share my screen. I was just saying, Angela, that I'm still, and Marcella, I'm still a little under the weather, so I'm not camera ready. So you will be seeing me this evening. So let me share my screen. Okay, all right. So let me do this. Okay, all right, let's get started. So this is session 3. And as you recall, session 1 was about adverse childhood experiences. And then session 2 was about adverse climate experiences and adverse cultural experiences. And now we're going to cover a very difficult topic, which is atrocious cultural experiences. And you already know about T.R.Y. Okay, so just a little bit of review. There are 4 levels of adverse experiences: adverse climate, adverse childhood, adverse community, and then at the very bottom, atrocious cultural experiences. And the reason that we talk about these is because of the impact that they have on marginalized communities, vulnerable communities, communities of color, whichever way you want to kind of look at these challenges. So can someone just let me know what you gained in understanding about adverse climate experiences? Oops.
Well, for me and the participants that I engaged with, it was seeing how it has impacted us, our lives, our generations, and like I said before, it seems to be a normalization, but things happen. This happened, that happened, which we tend to normalize it, but
Mm-hmm.
still, it affects us. And so
Mm-hmm.
that makes it adverse experiences.
Right. Thank you so much. And would somebody like to mention just 1 or 2 things, however you want to, speak about those, about adverse childhood experiences and what you learned?
I think it seemed like there's a disconnect. A lot of things people know have happened in their lives, but the connection of how it may have led to or where they are now. That connection, and after talking about it, it kind of just triggered some connections. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And the last call for comments that I'll ask for this evening before we go into our subject matter for today. What were your thoughts about adverse community experiences and what you learned about those? Adverse community experiences.
I'll say if I can again.
You can. Okay.
Just the fact that the poorer communities or the marginalized communities,
Mm-hmm.
we're playing catch up. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the whole lives is just trying to catch up, just trying to get the basic necessities, just from
Mm-hmm.
generation to generation. It's
Yeah.
playing catch up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And Marcella put in the chat, alcoholism was rampant in the old days, and all knew about it, and anyone that experienced it They helped with kids and all. Okay, thank you for that, Marcella. So tonight, again, I'm letting you know that this is going to be a difficult topic, as all of these have been, except when we learn about adverse childhood experiences and how they lead to uh, um, obesity, chronic disease, alcoholism, substance use, missed work, suicide attempts, STDs, cancer, COPD, broken bones, which stands for violence, then it's really a freeing thing, that we don't have to talk about what happened to you. It's 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 more about how do we become resilient in order to change our places in life and health. So one of the things that I mentioned many years ago when we started talking about ACEs for the first time, racism was not included. And so now the expanded ACEs, which, last time or time before, you saw the whole graphs about ACEs and the outcomes of ACEs. And you saw that racism was a part of that. So expanded ACEs include experiencing racism, witnessing violence, living in an unsafe neighborhood, experiencing bullying, and having a history of living in foster care. Neighborhood or community level ACEs have to do with the influence of family, household level ACEs, and toxic stress in children. And ACEs related to incarceration and racial or ethnic discrimination are most intrinsically, or most often, big word, linked to inequity. And so and you may not even consider or think about the times that you have been exposed to racism, because what we have done or you have done or we've seen other people do is to just say, okay, let me just get over it. Let me get through it. I realize that I experienced this, but we may not realize the impact of what we've experienced. So this is what's really important as well. When we talk about adverse community experiences, then we think about, what do I see? What do children see in the neighborhoods that they live in? Is it different because someone is white and privileged and lives in a less vulnerable community? What do our Black children and other children of color see in the neighborhoods that they are living in? And does it really matter what they see? Is there a connection between what people see, their behavior, and their health? So this is something else that we need to recognize, that it's very, very, very important. So it starts with a seed, and we are the seed. It begins with us. How much are we going to allow what we experience to dictate our health as we become more and more resilient? If you want to, hey, Alicia, if we
Hello.
do, hi, if you want to experience communities authentically, question history, embrace the unfamiliar, and challenge explanations of what we call reality. So all of us that are here together on this call together have experienced life in different ways. If we are Black or brown, then we have something in common that has to do with atrocious cultural experiences. But not only that, even people who are well-to-do that are Black and brown, living in certain communities, racism takes its toll. And what we understand based on research now is that atrocious cultural experiences impacts the DNA of people that are affected. I mentioned at another time that it's not only Black and brown people that have experienced atrocious cultural experiences, but Japanese Americans during World War II were put in concentration camps in the United States. I never learned about that in school. And how I learned about it was that when we lived in California for 3 years, I had, and now she is one of my best friends. It's Japanese. And she said, "Did you ever hear about the concentration camps?" I said, "No." And her grandparents actually were forced to give up their land, their belongings, and people told them, "Oh, we'll keep them safe for you until the war is over or whatever. And then, we'll give them back to you because you are our neighbors." Well, when the war was over, that didn't happen. The people took their money, took their belongings, and they had to start over again. And many of them started farming with orchards and strawberry farms, which they began to ship things all across the United States. And so they became prosperous, even though they lost everything. And that's a trauma that they hold. Native Americans, we've heard about. In terms of what happened to Native Americans, land being stolen and that kind of thing. Forced family separation in terms of marginalized communities, Hispanic people. Just think about not too long ago, a year or two ago, when families that were coming in, the children were separated from the parents and they were put in cells. It was horrific. So that trauma, toxic stress, is stored in DNA. And that's why some people have chronic diseases that are more heightened than others. So what does this look like? What does inclusion look like? So separation means, let's say that the green represents a table that we want to be a part of. Let's say that they're discussing, this is just an example. Let's say that an organization that is predominantly predominantly white, or ivory tower, decides that they're going to have this process that they're going to do, and they want Black and brown community members to participate. Well, what separation looks like is that, hey, everybody out there in marginalized communities, we want you to participate, but there's really no voice to do that. So people may come to you and say, "I want you to fill out this survey," or "I want to discuss this with you," but how it's going to be used, how will I know how it's used? Will I hear back? You kind of don't really hear about that too much. And then exclusion means that people are, the people that are in control or in power are doing all the work. And then, Black and brown people just get a little bit of information, but they're not a part of the process. In integration, you have, the majority people who are at the table, and then you have Black and brown people read in the situation. But if somebody asks a question, then it's almost like you're not heard. And it doesn't make a difference in terms of, sometimes it doesn't make a difference, regardless of what letters you have before your name or after your name. If you are Black and brown, you may be excluded. And one of the things that I have done on purpose is that if I am in a room and the majority is holding the meeting and Black and brown people speak up and I'm there and we are ignored, then I'll raise my hand or put in the chat, "So and so is trying to say something," because that's what inclusion means. Every voice matters. Has anyone on the call experienced separation, exclusion, integration? Yes, please go ahead and speak your piece, Alicia.
Yes. Hi everyone, and forgive my tardiness.
Okay.
But yes, I've experienced that on and I think as growing up, I've experienced the separation,
Mm-hmm.
um not even sometimes with white people, but even so much with
Mm-hmm.
within my own race.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the integration, I've experienced that. And the first time that I've ever really experienced that integration was in high school. I went to an all black school at first, and I went to my senior year, I went to a predominantly white school.
Mm-hmm.
And I played sports.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody on the volleyball team was white, and I
Mm.
was the only black person to try out. So I felt like I was the token.
Yeah. Okay.
They allowed me to come because I was the only one to play.
Right.
It didn't even matter if I had the skill or not. It just
Yeah.
that was a horrible time for me, but that was life, and that's what I experienced.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. And one
Yes.
of the things that we try to do as well is, I mean, because it's not only on us as Black and Brown people to fix this, it also has to do with um, majority people, and they could be a majority based on culture. Like as you're saying, it's not only white majority people; it's whoever they feel is in power. So if there are, um, let's see, Black and Brown people who have reached a certain level in society, then you may be treated the same way. And or if it's a situation where it's a pastor and a congregation, wherever there's power, power needs to learn that power is not always in control. And so, without going into more detail about this, there's something that's called trauma informed care that is really big in terms of how majority people, whoever they may be, get funding. So they have to show how they are co-developing and co-working with people in order to get funds. And there's some organizations, I'm talking about big organizations like Duke and NCCU that have actually lost funding because they have not done this. Okay. So next, and I think I've shown this before, but what we want to believe and know is that people are resilient. People need our compassion as they learn new skills. We need to learn how skills of well-being can reduce suffering. So we begin with what is right with you and what are your strengths. I showed this last week, and these are the systems that I was talking about. When I talk about majority, I'm talking about systems like banks in order to get a loan or in order to get housing, a mortgage, things like that. And neighborhood and physical environment has to do with transportation and parks and that kind of thing. We don't control those things necessarily, but county and city um, have the ability to increase the opportunity in these areas. And then there's education, Board of Education, and these are the systems that make decisions. Food, we talked about food deserts, community safety and social context, social integration, just like we just talked about with, having people all together, working together, gaining information together, giving someone a leg up. If someone knows about a job, then usually the way that people navigate that kind of environment is by who they know. So and so knows so and so, such and such. And that doesn't happen in many Black and brown communities because there's not the relationship. And so that's one of the things that we are creating with this process as well. Healthcare system. So how do we make sure that people not only get healthcare, but that healthcare is equitable? And there's a line to be drawn throughout these systems that has to do with racism and discrimination. So first of all, we need to know that these things exist, and then we learn what we can do about them. As you know, if you were able to participate in the October 17th call, is that this is about preventing teen violence and mental health, Black youth in crisis. And so there is a resolution that will be presented to the city, the county, and the Board of Education so that individuals will be able to, not individuals, but majority institutions, will have to answer in how they will promote resilience in these areas. One of the things, because you may wonder, okay, so some of these things have to do with T.R.Y. I didn't know I was joining T.R.Y. I didn't know, why is T.R.Y. even involved? Well, the reason that T.R.Y. is involved is not only because we have the idea and desire to get this done, but we have the data that you've seen all along that shows what the problems actually are. And we're seeking to use you all as health ambassadors so that you can spread the word, so others will know what to avoid, or others will know that it's not their fault, or others will know what the challenges really are. So this is from October 18th, and the numbers of overdoses among Black people in Durham is over 60%. And our next conversation will be about overdose and how you will provide information to the community and help others to learn about it as well. So I wrote a chapter in a book, and that has to do with alcohol outlet density, because this is another area. One of the things that you'll begin to notice, and as you were doing your windshield review, taking a picture of a community that's healthy, a community that's not healthy, and that's called the built environment or adverse community experiences, you saw that there were more alcohol outlets, tobacco shops in Black and brown communities than there are in white communities. And so the question is, so what? The reason that we need to know this is because there are harms that are created based on the built environment. So what do our children see? They see more alcohol and tobacco shops. And so it becomes a norm. And it's not necessarily that they will drink alcohol when they are in elementary school, but what a child sees is what they will begin to think is normal. And the desire for those things, especially if you look at the names of some of the products, will present a way to think that it's okay. All over North Carolina, deaths due to overdoses and alcohol increased. And so this is all over North Carolina, not just Durham. And look at the increase, 139% among Black African Americans, 117% among Native Americans and Indigenous people, and even went up in white people. But if we don't pay attention to our community, then we'll see more deaths than we should. Percent of overdoses involving alcohol Okay, so now we begin to look at convenience stores and gas stations that sell alcohol and the number of overdoses that you saw of Black people in Durham, over 60%. And now you see where overdoses and alcohol are connected. And so I asked for this data from the state of North Carolina because I could not understand what was going on with Black people and overdoses. So it's not just plain old overdoses, which are bad enough, but it's overdoses, opiates, and alcohol that are used together. So am I saying that Black people shouldn't drink alcohol? No. I'm saying that there is a way to use alcohol safely and without overdoing it in terms of adults, and establishing a norm among young people so that they don't think that binge drinking and just, drinking to be drunk is something that one should strive for. And I have something else in the chat. And Crystal says, so true. That's why they think it's okay to spend all their money at the corner store. That's very true. So one of the things we want young people to do, and I had been able to teach an alcohol prevention class to every driver's ed class in Durham. So I had almost 900 students a year. And, I talked to them about the dangers of drinking alcohol, but mostly about their resilience first, not about ACEs, but about what they considered to be important for their lives. And then we started talking about alcohol. The fact of the matter is that alcohol is a poison. It should only be consumed in certain doses. Otherwise, people can die from alcohol poisoning. And that's not something that they really thought about. And I'm going beyond the topic tonight because we'll talk about that more next time. So, what is safe alcohol use? What, and that kind of thing. So, okay. So, marvelous and extraordinary, that's what I call children. And so, we're going to look at how children experience racism before we close tonight. Okay. So, this picture represents how many majority people see Black children versus white children. These children are supposed to be the same age. They both got in trouble. They all got in trouble at school. Tell me what you think about this picture and what does it say to you about white children versus Black children? I'll help you out. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In regards to the picture, what do I see?
Yeah.
What
Do you see a difference in how Black children are portrayed versus white children?
In this picture, no, I don't see. I don't see
That's
anything.
fine. That's fine.
I just see kids up against the locker.
Okay. All
That's
right.
what I see.
That's fine. No. There's
Sorry.
no wrong answer. No wrong answer.
Okay.
Safe space, no wrong answer. Okay. So, Black children, whether they're male or female, tend to be seen as adults, seen to be menacing, like, oh my goodness, I need to watch out because there's a Black child, versus the white children who look a little scared. They're pictured as being, like more innocent looking. And so adultification is a problem when it comes to our Black children, whether they're male or female. There was a situation, I want to say a couple of years ago, it might have been before COVID, where an 8-year-old little Black girl, 8 years old, had marijuana in her backpack, 8 years old. So mommy wasn't called, questions weren't asked about, where did this come from? The idea was, and this was a Black little girl, the idea was that she had something illegal. The thought was that she had done something illegal, which may be true, but to put her in handcuffs and take her downtown for that was unforgivable in my opinion. And she didn't know what was going on. Where did it come from? Did she score it from somebody, or did she see it on the table at home? And so that is what happened to that little girl, and I'm sure that she was traumatized. I'm not saying that that happens all the time, but it certainly did happen in this case. And there were a couple of other incidences where T.R.Y had to intervene because of the same kind of situation, but it was with vape products. So in elementary school, there were some children who had brought vape instruments or devices to school that they saw or got from an older sibling or seeing them around, took it, and they didn't know what they didn't know what it was, didn't know how to use it, and weren't trying to use it. But the three kids who were all in a circle looking at it were going to be suspended. And I said, well, wait a minute. Did you ask any questions? Why would you think someone in elementary school would necessarily feel like they wanted to get high using a vape product? And so there's some legitimate things that can be done that we've worked on policy with the school system. And I think I have something else in chat. Okay. Okay. We always hear about the Black kids because most times no mom or adult come forward, but white kids have parents to step up and basically just make it go away. Unfortunately, that can be the case. I will say that Durham Public Schools, and I'm really proud of this, but at the same time, we have to make sure that these things are being carried out in the way that policies are supposed to. So that there's a policy now to how they're supposed to deal with these situations before it comes to, just dealing with it with the law. And the situation is that, yes, it's wonderful that that policy is in place, but we have to make sure that it is being followed. And the way that we do that is by, at least T.R.Y does, and probably some other organizations. So I'm not saying that T.R.Y is the only one who's out here doing anything. That's not the point. I'm providing data and information. But we track who's getting suspended. We track what ages children are when they get suspended and those kinds of things. Okay, so 95% among the children that are involved in juvenile justice have stressor and, well, girls have stressor and trauma-related disorders, and males 24%, but I think it's 24% because the gentleman did not answer the question. And so according to the Association of American Pediatrics, they sent a notice out to all of their physicians to be prepared to counsel families on their exposure to racism, and for pediatricians to examine their own biases and address them. So this was done a few years ago. And of course, it depends upon how people take personal responsibility. I have the opportunity to speak to every first year medical student at Duke University Medical Student Center. And I, because they want to learn about community and all of these things, which is fine. I do that every year. And then, talking about implicit bias, I said to them, this is going to change when you change. And I let them know that now. Were they happy with me about it? No. But that's a challenge. And Brittany, your hand is up. Please go ahead and unmute and say what you would like to.
I just had something to say about the pediatricians and the doctors and how kids are treated or families are treated different. Black. Now, I'm not white, so I don't know if they ask everybody this, but I've always wondered, do you ask other people of color, do you have a gun in the house? Like, do you run these same questions?
Wait a minute. What'd you say? If you have a gun?
Yeah, I've been asked that in a doctor's appointment. Do you have guns in the house or this, that, and the third? And I'm like, no, but does that like I know it matters. That matters, but people have a right to bear arms.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I just be like, what in the world? Are you asking this to somebody else? Are you asking? That's my question sometimes. I just be like, oh yeah. And I just answer it because I answer it, but it's just like sometimes you feel offended and maybe you just wonder, are you asking the other families like that have their because you can have the father there, you cannot have the father there. And you can be in an appointment, where the dad is there, the dad could be at work. They don't know.
Right.
But it's just like, are you asking the same questions to every family? And in my head, I just wonder. That's what I wonder. I'm not sure. I can't say they're not. I can't say they are. Right. It's just like when you go to the doctor with your children, it just seems like you're already my son is already picked out as the African American black male.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So first of all, I think many people don't realize they don't have to answer the question, because they should say to you before they start asking the questions, you are free not to answer any question that you are uncomfortable with. But I'm sorry,
I'm sorry. They've never done that.
Right. Well, that's number one. Everybody should know that there's no requirement for you to answer any question that you're uncomfortable with. A new process that Duke does have is to ask about the social determinants of health. And those are questions like, do you have enough food? Do you have transportation? Was there ever a time in the last, I don't know, they may say 30 days, I'm not sure the time period, where you had a problem paying rent? Those kinds of questions are on the social determinants of health survey that they're supposed to ask. And the reason that they ask that is only because they're supposed to be helping with people who say, I didn't have enough food. And then they're supposed to make a referral so that people can get food. So that's the social determinants of health survey that physicians are supposed to get information to. And I have a copy of the survey, and I don't think that it says anything about guns. I'll check again because it may be something new. But again, you do not have to answer any question that you are uncomfortable with. So I didn't know that that was the case either, because they didn't say that to me. So when when somebody was when the it wasn't the doctor, it was the physician's assistant or whatever, started asking me questions, I said, I don't care to answer. I don't think that's any of your business. So, that's how I know you don't have to answer the questions. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to say, okay, leave the clinic now? No, they have to abide by what your thoughts are. Or you can say, why do you need to know that? Why is that important for this visit? But those are things that we don't know generally as a community. We just figure that it's a doctor and I'm supposed to do what they tell me to. So thank you so much, Brittany. And thank you for, coming off mute, raising your hand, because as I'm doing the presentation, it's hard for me to look at the chat at the same time or to know when you have a comment. And I really want to hear your comments. So please feel free to do so. Okay, so the report from the Pediatricians Association calls racism a socially transmitted disease passed down through generations, leading to the inequities observed in our population today. And think about it. I don't know how many of you have had access to your grandparents, great grandparents, or even have information on generations that have gone on before and understand the kinds of things that they experienced that, I mean, really impacted them and how they lived, how they raised their children, how those children raised you, how you're raising your children. I mean, it's a generational thing, and we try to protect ourselves, but at the same time, we may be harming each other because of lack of trust and what was carried down. So racism, institutional racism. Institutional racism has to do with those majority pockets that we talked about in the social determinants of health. And then there's discrimination, and then there's bias. So privilege is a special right or advantage that's given only to particular people of a certain group. So there are inequities, lack of fairness or injustice, stereotypes. I could give stories, but we don't have time. And part of your homework, I'll ask about these, as individuals, a real or imagined trait of an individual, applying that to a group, prejudice, a conscious or unconscious assignment of positive or negative value to traits of a group. So premature birth and low birth weight for babies born to Latina mothers, exposure to racism in adults has been linked to increased risk of heart disease and depression. It's Black mothers as well. Depression, obesity, worsened sleep, higher rates of doctor visits, and lower self-esteem among children has been seen by children who are exposed to racism. And this, here we go, even 0 to 36 months, children can sense racism because their perception of safety is closely linked to the perceived safety of their caregivers. So how are caregivers behaving? Think about young children that may be in the foster care system. And I'm not saying I see you, Brittany. I'm not saying that every white caregiver is racist when they're taking foster parents, are racist when it comes to Black and brown children that they may be fostering, but that can be a challenge. Brittany, go ahead.
I was from 0 to 36 months. As I just had my son, I told the story about mothers and birth. And when you're a Black woman, it's different, and you're having a Black child.
Mm-hmm.
So they waited till the very last minute, and my child was in distress. So he could have very well not been here. They just waited and waited and waited and waited until he couldn't take it no more, and he was like right there.
Mm.
And I felt like, that's a difference in between someone else and me, because and then also I feel like as we're raising our children, I don't want to raise my child to also dislike other races or dislike the police or dislike. I just want them to be aware and be stand up young men but I also want them to be aware of their surroundings and how people are. Some people, because everyone's not the same.
Right.
So it's very much hard raising children, like you said in the last slide, when you're raising your children and they're raised, it's different generations and stuff, and you don't want to carry it on.
That's true. That's true. And one of the best things that we can do for our children is to expose them to other people so that they won't think badly about themselves. They'll see themselves as being just as good, just as smart, just as accomplished as anything else. But that takes some effort in exposing them to other people.
Other people.
Yeah, yeah. As long as, they're safe in doing so.
I believe it starts at home because
Yes.
I do word affirmations with my son. So
Mm-hmm.
in the morning I do word, so he knows he's smart and he's kind and he's.
Yes.
They have to hear that you're
Mm-hmm.
strong, but you can still show your emotions. But I want you to use your words as a, and that's very important. And
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you. That is so true. And then 3 to 5 year olds recreating what they tend to recreate the traumatic event, and they may have trouble sleeping with their appetite or reaction to loud sounds or sudden movements. And this may not be something that we're aware of. And because they're having difficulty, I mean, it might have happened at daycare or at school. So they're responding to how they may have been treated at school if a teacher yelled at them or put them in a corner or something like that. And so, your child may have difficulty going to sleep, and without thinking about it, you know, you just need to get in the bed and go to sleep, instead of thinking that maybe something happened at school that's causing them to behave this way, instead of thinking that it's, just the way that they're acting because they want to be disobedient, because that's not always the case. 6 to 11 years old, when they view media coverage, then they may worry about a similar event that could happen to them, even though it hasn't necessarily actually happened to them. So just be careful about what they're watching or listening to on social media without having a conversation. We should always be available to our children so that we can have conversations about what they're hearing. 12 to 17, high school students may use substances to cope with anxiety that they feel as a result of racism. And so, again, kids may act out, even older children may act out because of what they've experienced. And they may not even understand, so and so doesn't like me, or something like that. So have a conversation, because they may not just come out because they don't know. They don't realize that that's what it is. So this is how racism causes trauma. There's a racist event. They have a traumatic reaction. And then they have symptoms such as not being able to sleep or just lashing out and being angry with their parent. You don't, what, it's like, I didn't do anything to you. Then they tend to re-experience it within themselves. They avoid that this has happened, so, I'll be okay. It don't matter. Then they have negative moods and thoughts, and then physiological arousal that has to do with not sleeping, not eating, playing video games all night long, maybe even using substances in order to get rid of the feeling when they don't really understand where the feeling came from. So, kindness, which is something that we probably didn't learn about parenting, kindness, patience, humility, respect are things that we need to use with our children, young adults, whoever's in the home, so that we can create a situation where we can live as a family together and not just shut the door on each other. We must understand our own beliefs, biases, privileges, and responses, and reflect on how we show up in the world for our children. So helping children and ourselves, we've talked about this. So it's not just children, it's us. Practice self-care, provide a physical space for children to feel safe, maintain routines, help to verbalize feelings, help children calm their bodies and minds when they become upset. This is a huge report, the North Carolina Institutes of Medicine, that I was a part of, and I introduced ACEs in every single aspect of what they're working on to make sure that the majority folks realize the impact of ACEs and racism in every single aspect of these upper level things. Again, not to toot my own horn, but just to let you recognize that there are things that have been and are being done. Create a safe and trusting environment that benefits yourself and your children. Be a safe and trusting place that benefits whoever is in your household. So again, what's so difficult is that we're experiencing some of these things ourselves, and being impatient is not helpful. So we have to create a space for ourselves where we feel calm enough in order to address situations with our families. Okay, this is going to be difficult, but we're almost at a close. There is no social change fairy. There is only the change made by the hands of individuals. And I believe that we are the champions of that change through what you're learning and how you will administer this process to others. The last thing that I want to mention is, the song that we sing, the Star Spangled Banner. And we are aware of verse 1, which I'm not going to sing, but I'll just say these words. And then there's verse 3 that I will share with you. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave? So we were taught to sing this at games or whenever it is, putting our hand over our heart or whatever the posture is we're supposed to display. Okay, that is verse 1. This is verse 3. And where is that band who so valiantly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight, nor the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. Verse 3. So what we're creating, what you are a part of, what you are providing as information to others will change the dynamic from being top down to grassroots up, and you will change communities one person at a time. I appreciate you, and I thank you so much for your participation in this effort. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts before we close for the evening? Yes, Alicia.
With the Star Spangled Banner.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I actually teach my children the Black national anthem.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But wow.
Right. Right.
You know, a lot of times people say this saying, if you want to fool Black people, put it in writing because we don't read.
Wow. Mm. Wow. Yeah.
That's what they say about
Mm.
our people. Put
Mm.
it in writing because they won't read it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And wow, I'm stuck on I'm stuck on that. I just,
Right.
you know, people don't even know because they don't go no further than the home
Mm-hmm.
of the brave.
Right. I know.
They cut it off like that's the whole song.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And they don't even know that they're sitting up here standing
Mhm.
and hand over the chest and
Right.
you know proud about this thing and
Right.
it's not even they're not. I mean, did you read the rest of it?
No,
I mean, you just opened my eyes to that. I didn't even know that was. I thought that was the end of the song,
I know.
honestly. And
Right.
I'm 52.
Right. Right. And so, we are among ourselves as Black and Brown people, but I will let you know that in every situation where I do a training that have white people in it, I show that. I show that because there is no law that says we have to follow the national anthem. The national anthem was something that came into play that was supposed to uplift the military. It doesn't even have anything to do with some presidential order that says at every football game or every whatever, you're supposed to salute and do all of this. There's nothing that says that. It's just something that we have adopted. I mean, all of America has adopted based on people thinking that that's what we're supposed to do. And there are white people who get so upset to the point of crying when I do this presentation that shows that. And I say, don't cry, tell somebody else, and make sure that your implicit bias doesn't hurt Black and Brown people. So, and those of you who go on to your certification, they will not include this kind of information, but it's there in order to make sure that the truth of what needs to be addressed is addressed. And so you'll probably see this conversation as a part of that certification now because it's just unbelievable. And T.R.Y with other people wrote a resolution that racism is a public health crisis. And that was signed by the Board of Education, city and county. So I have something in the chat, just a minute. Okay, Alicia is right. Yes, she is. And Marcella also writes, we always hear about I already read that one. Okay, why don't we ever hear this version? Because people don't want you to know it. That's the only reason. And I don't know how many people have read. I think there are actually 4 verses, but the third one is the one that is just the most shocking. So that's where we are. Okay, so yes, Brittany.
Yeah, I never knew that, and I feel kind of bad because I actually like to read about stuff and stuff. I never went no further than, well, actually, I haven't done that pledge or song or whatever the case may be in years because they took it out of school. So,
Hmm.
um, and that's another thing. It was in the schools, and they made you feel like you had to stand up and do it, and if you didn't, you got in trouble.
Right.
But um, I didn't know it was more to the song, which is sad. But
Yeah.
figured out, and that's crazy to me.
It is. It is. And so you'll have a copy, just like I've shared copies of all of these things with you so that you can do your training with other people. That'll be in there too. And one of the reasons that I started looking at this is because the church that I went to, where I grew up in New Jersey, was founded in 1886 or something like that. And then the church that my grandparents grew up in South Carolina was founded at the same time. So I wanted to know, oh, this is great. So I wonder what the difference was between the establishment of the two churches. And what I found out was the church that was established in New Jersey owned slaves, and Black slaves were a part of the church, but slave owners could still sell the slaves, even though they were a part of the same congregation. This stuff goes deep, deep, deep. And then you think about how many Black and brown, I'll say senior citizens, are dealing with trauma. And I mean, so many people don't even want to talk to seniors anymore because of the way they may state things. Well, they don't know. I mean, and so we have to help all people understand what the situation is, and we have to work together. So, Brittany, is that a new hand? That's right.